Hello, and welcome to our very, very last lunation forecast of the year. Because as you can see, or should be able to see if I zoom up on this a little bit, the new moon that we are forecasting here and discussing here is on the 31st of December 2021. My goodness, that's a bit of a retrograde moment, 2024. And it is happening South African time just past midnight on that last day of the year. So for some places, it might fall in the 30th of December. Either way, we are right at the end of that solar year time frame. And remember that I've set the chart for South Africa, for Port Alfred, where I'm living. And so don't worry that you probably don't have Libra on the ascendant. If you live in pretty much anywhere in South Africa, that will be true that you do. But for most other parts of the world, it will be different. So rather think about where 9 degrees of Capricorn falls in your chart, because that's where this impact is going to be felt most strongly for you. So remember, with all of these forecasts, whenever you watch mine or anybody else's forecasts, this is a general weather report, so to speak, of where the planets are going to be on that full moon or new moon, in this case, new moon in Capricorn. And so as such, it's what's happening now in the cosmos. To make it more personal, you have to bring it into your own natal chart and see where these things are impacting you. And that may be the actual new moon degree. So it's 9 degrees and 43 minutes. It's almost 10 degrees of Capricorn is in your chart. Let's say you have your sun at 10 degrees of Capricorn, or you have your Venus at 7 degrees of Capricorn. Then this chart is going to be even more powerful for you. But it's not just where the sun and moon are. You can also look at the other planets and say, well, I don't have any planets in Capricorn. However, 2 degrees of Leo is pertinent for me, and that is where Mars is currently retrograding at this new moon. So these are the ways that you start to personalize this. And this is something that gets easier and easier as you practice it. So I do suggest that you have a forecast like this on whilst you have your chart open, and then you're able to listen to what's being said and the degree points, and then look at where that is in your life. And the house that it's impacting in your life is always going to be of great importance to you. So this new moon at 9 degrees of Capricorn, 9 degrees and 43 minutes of Capricorn. New moon means the sun and moon. You can see it here on the right, but also down here in this chart, at the bottom of the chart, at 9 degrees of Capricorn, we have the sun and the moon. And new moons are always sun and moon together in the sky. It begins a new lunar cycle, just as when the sun steps into the first degree of a sign, which is the 0 degrees of Capricorn. That's the beginning of a solar month within a sign. Well, this is the beginning of a lunar cycle within a sign. Okay, so here we have 9 degrees of Capricorn, and we can see that this is forming a relatively nice sextile to Saturn. And Saturn is the ruler of this new moon, because Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn that the new moon is in. And he in Pisces at 14 degrees of Pisces is supporting sun and moon in the endeavors of Capricorn things. Again, look at where that is in your life. For example, in this chart, we might say it's in the 4th house. And you could read it in the 3rd or 4th house, but it's quite close to the 4th house, so we might call it in the 4th house. But let's just say in this chart that it's in the 4th house. Then you might say to yourself, if this was your natal chart, this is going to be happening around the space of my home, roots, and security, which is a very different space to the space of how you earn your money, for example, or the space of your intimate relationships, for example. So this is how you will personalize it further, as I say. Okay, and Saturn is being very supportive of those Capricornic things in that Capricorn space in your life. And Saturn is about doing things consistently, reliably over time, having discipline and discernment as you do these things. So because Capricorn rules Saturn, Saturn rules Capricorn. Mercury is just direct as I'm recording this, but clearly I'm still a little tongue-tied, and Mars is currently retrograde and will still be retrograde at this particular new moon. But what I was trying to say is that Saturn, as the ruler of Capricorn, is also means a lot of Saturny keywords can also be applied to Capricorn. So Capricorn wants order and organization and build things in a nice, organized fashion, not haphazardly, not forgetting to let the concrete dry before you do the next level of things. It's this put in the extra time, put in the planning, and be consistent as you build whatever the thing is that you're building. Again, where in your chart is this happening? Okay, so we're definitely in a supportive space as we end out 2024 and step into 2025 to really recognize, what have I been trying to build and achieve? Is that still on track with where I feel that I need to be this year? If not, how do I sort of tweak that a little and recalibrate now, rather than building the whole high-rise building only to realize, oh, at floor 3, I should have probably recognized that I wanted to do something different with the doors and the handles or whatever it was. So this is a time to really check in, because a new moon in Capricorn is saying plant your intentions around the things that you want to build, that you want to grow, that you would like to leave as a legacy. And remember, there's many pivot points along the way where we can change direction somewhat, but Capricorn is a cardinal sign, which means it is a leader in its field, an initiator of something. So this is a space where you really want to say, if I was the boss of this business, what would I do? And you are the boss of the business, that is you. And so where is it that you want to be like a boss? Plant those seeds, get like, really, this is what I'm going to achieve. These are my goals. And it really does align with one's New Year's resolutions. I don't do New Year's resolutions personally in the traditional way, because I feel like we set ourselves up to fail. But I definitely start the new year in my own way with a 12-card tarot spread, so I can kind of get a feel of what the year will hold for me, of real reflective qualities of what 2024 held. So what do I want to take with me and what do I want to leave behind for 2025? Whatever your process is around reflecting on the year that's just been before stepping into the year that's to come. It's always a good time of year for that. And then this year, with the added new moon, it's even more so. Not to mention that, okay, at the time of the full moon, that was 2 weeks prior to this new moon, that was when Mercury stationed direct. So he is still in, here's Mercury at 18 degrees of Sagittarius. He's still a few degrees out of getting out of his post-retrograde shadow. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry too much. For those who know, you know. So he's still got, I think it's about 4 degrees left before he's out of the shadow. So we're still finding solutions to some of the Mercury retrograde stuff that showed up for us. Again, where is that area of Sagittarius in your own chart? That will give you guidance as to how Mercury retrograde has been affecting you. And at the point of this new moon is still sort of closing out that lesson. And Mars up here at 2 degrees of Leo is still retrograde and almost ready to step back into Cancer, which he will do not long after this lunation. So this is kind of important, because if we add that reflective quality that naturally comes with the end of the year, and add to it that retrogrades are by their very nature reflective, it's an optical illusion, but the energy is that the planet moves backwards, not literal, but the energetic backwards movement of a planet says, let me revisit some territory I've just traveled. And Mercury is going to be our thinking process. So we're still kind of getting through the end of, I've reevaluated and rethought and remembered, and all those Mercury things, all these memories and ideas of how I used to think and how I used to feel and how I used to act, and all of that stuff with Mercury. And then with Mars, it's very much about the acting. How do I do? How do I get what I want? And because, again, in a fire sign, it can be extra reactive. So with the Mars retrograde, we're feeling these spaces which could be quite triggering for us. Again, depending on where Leo, the early degrees of Leo and the late degrees of Cancer are in your chart, because that's where that retrograde's happening, that gives you extra understanding of the flavor and the area in your life that you're most strongly being impacted by that. And maybe you don't feel Capricorn is a strong archetype for you. And here we are talking about the Capricorn new moon, but you have a very strong affinity with late degrees of Cancer or the archetype of Cancer. So then that resonates more with you. This is how you begin to get a little more nuanced and personalized in your chart. And if this sounds confusing, because astrology can be super confusing when you first start becoming aware of it, because it's much, much more complicated than just, or complex than just saying, I'm a Gemini. And so don't panic when it feels overwhelming. Just take in whatever you take in and trust that that is the exact right formulation for you, and that this is a lifelong study and a lifelong exploration. Should you choose to be on that particular journey, then don't try to over understand the things you don't understand. It'll come. And I say this because I am that person who wants to understand everything yesterday. And astrology has really taught me that that is impossible. So just chip away at it, which is also quite a Capricornic sort of feel. It's like, just take that next right step. I can't understand it all. I'm not going to get to the top of the mountain in a hurry. I just have to keep stepping forward, taking that next step, chipping away at the mountain, and eventually I will get there. So that is a very good time, even if there is something big and somewhat overwhelming, let's say like the study of astrology that you want to take on into the year of 2025, you might put your intentions in this to steadily and systematically move forward with your astrology studies, just as an example. Obviously, that can apply to whatever works for you. Okay, we also have a T-square here between Mercury at 18 degrees of Sagittarius, opposite 13 degrees of Gemini Jupiter. And both of those two planets that are opposite each other are 90 degrees from or squaring Saturn at 14 degrees of Pisces. So these are all mutables. We've just come from the mutable Gemini full moon 2 weeks prior to this Capricorn new moon. So we are very much in the feeling of this kind of mutable space. We've been feeling like, oh, what fits? How can I be more adaptable and flexible? How can I pivot in places where maybe I've been getting a little bit set in my ways and stuck? And again, the retrogrades, even though they get a bad rap, are kind of facilitating this, like, hold up, maybe if I think about it differently, or hold up, maybe if I do it differently, I can get better results. So they're helping us to unravel some of that. And then we're moving into a new year, which is also just traditionally a space where there is this impetus for change and shift. It's like a delineation, like I am going to step over the threshold of 365 days of this and move into that, even though really it's just another day. It gives us that space of pause, reflect, observe. Did this work out for me or didn't it? And how can I change it? So a T-square in the mutables is really opening us up to that, because it's still in this T-squares, Mercury still in his shadow phase, where we've just discussed how he's been feeling about all of this. Saturn in Pisces, who is not at his most comfortable in the waters of Pisces. However, in the waters of Pisces, he has definitely, because Saturn is so structured and organized and ordered, and this way, this is the only way that things can be done. And Pisces is much more expansive and fluctuating, waves, tides, currents, undertows. So Saturn has already been here for a good while. So he's kind of like in it now. He's kind of figuring out how to be his somewhat structured self in a less structured space. But he is definitely about, we still need the emotional discipline. We still need to find a way to create something concrete, even in the waters that move. And then Jupiter in Gemini. Now, the interesting thing, I'm pretty sure I would have mentioned this in the last forecast, but Jupiter in Gemini is not at his most comfortable, because he actually rules the opposite sign of Sagittarius. And Mercury in Sagittarius is not happy because he rules the opposite sign of Gemini. So what happens is, a sign furthest from its home sign is usually furthest from comfortable in some ways. You could look at it that way. But when they have what's called mutual reception, so Jupiter's in Gemini's place at the same time that Jupiter is in Mercury's place, at the same time that Mercury is in Jupiter's place, it mitigates a lot of the discomfort for the planet because they're kind of helping each other. It's like I've got the cheat codes to that place because I make the rules, and you've got the cheat codes to the place I'm in because you make the rules. So what if we give each other the cheat codes, and then we can be a little bit more comfortable in this place than we would otherwise be, so we can dig a little deeper. So we're still outside of the comfort zone, and you know, one of my favorite sayings, because I say it all the time, there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. So it's not like they're in the comfort zone. They're still in the growth zone. So they're still a little bit uncomfortable, but not terribly uncomfortable, almost as if, you know, when you're really uncomfortable and really triggered in a space, your nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and you're just panicked. And in that space, it's very hard to grow through because you're in panic, you're in a state of crisis. So it's almost as if these two planets are getting to be out of crisis, but still in enough discomfort that they know they have to learn something through this experience, whilst they're both squaring Saturn in Pisces, which is also Jupiter ruled. So Jupiter rules both Pisces and, Pisces and Sagittarius. And also, there's not a mutual reception here or that mitigation the way there is with Mercury because Saturn is in Jupiter's sign, but Jupiter is not in Saturn's sign. So of these planets, the most uncomfortable currently would probably be Saturn, but the slower moving planets tend to win the battle. And Saturn of those three is the slower moving planet. So there is this really interesting dynamic. And if you have a lot of mutable energy in your chart, so if you have lots of planets or placements in any of the mutable signs, being Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, then you are more likely to really feel this part of the chart, which isn't even, this is what I was saying earlier, it's not even the Capricorn section of this chart. If you're very mutable, you might be feeling much more strongly into this mutable T square. Mars is, oh, mosquitoes, sorry. Mars is having a lovely trine to Jupiter. I don't know where my brain is today, Neptune in Pisces, but it'll be getting stronger as he continues to move backwards into Pisces. Then it will be a water to water trine rather than a fire to water trine. And we're getting really closer and closer at this point to the nodes shifting signs. So the North Node is currently at 1 degree and 33 minutes of Aries, moving back into Pisces. They always move retrograde, move backwards, the nodes. And then the South Node is exactly opposite that at the 1st degree of Libra. So we are in a transitional space there as well as we are at the end of this year, and we're feeling almost the shifting of the nodes simultaneously. We're feeling that mutable T square. We're feeling the after effects of the Mercury retrograde and the still effects of the Mars retrograde. We've got this mutual reception vibe going on that's been going on for a while with Jupiter and Mercury, because Mercury has spent a lot longer with having a retrograde in Sagittarius. So there's been this dance for a while. And then, of course, at this point, we also have a very close, getting stronger opposition. I think the 3rd of January is the second of the three exact oppositions between Mars and Pluto. So the first one was on, it's the 3rd to the 6th. Sorry, I didn't look this up before coming on, but the 3rd to the 6th of November. And the next one is the 3rd to the 6th of, I think it's the 3rd of January now, as the new year begins. So look back to that first one in November, and then this is the retrograde one, and then there'll be a third one when Mars stations direct. Whatever was happening early November, there's probably going to be a resurge of that energy for you. And already at this new moon, you're probably going to be feeling whatever that is coming on or having already hit. So it doesn't always wait for the exact opposition or the exact something. Some of us experience things sooner, before the actual thing happens. Some of us really bang on, can be the exact expression of it. Or maybe we feel after, wow, I see what that was about. And we didn't realize it as one revolutionary moment per se. So just recognizing that this Mars Pluto opposition has kind of been in place since early November. I mean, we might even say late October. And it's going to be a continued experience where we're going to have to shift and feel into it. And Pluto is newly in the sign of Aquarius. We've been talking about this for ages. I'm sure you've heard it on many a forecast if you listen to many astrologers. And so we're also still learning. You know, it's often said that we don't really know what the outer planet's journey through a sign will be until it's been past the first 3 degrees. We're not going to experience the first 3 degrees of Pluto in Aquarius really moving past that until not even 2025. I think it's 2026 before he actually gets past the 3rd degree of Aquarius. So we're still in a seed kind of period here. And Mars Pluto opposition is also, it's not comfortable. It's and if you have more fixed planet energies in your chart, and the fixed planets are going to be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, then this might be the part of this chart that is the most uncomfortable for you. Okay, because that is fixed energy. And we've still, of course, even though it's later degrees of Taurus rather than the early degrees of Aquarius, Leo, but we also have Uranus and Taurus. So, for example, in my chart, I have Mars at 24 degrees of Taurus. So I'm really feeling that at the moment. I'm really feeling Uranus dancing backwards and forwards over my Mars. That's something that is very personal to me. And then I'm going to say, where is that in my chart? And I know that that's right up at the top of my chart, at the cusp of my 10th house. So that's where I'm going to be looking in my chart. Now, what does that mean? And I'll build the story out for myself. What does Uranus mean? What does Taurus mean? What does 10th house mean? How am I feeling? All the things that I've mentioned here in conjunction with that hitting tightly on my chart. That's one place where it hits my chart, but there's more areas. And this is also what you look at as you develop into this. You look at various areas that are being impacted in your chart. And also, when astrology gets complicated, I'm coming back to just what resonated, what stood out for you. If I say something and you think, that's interesting, pay attention to that. And if there's a lot of other stuff that's just noise, just let the noise die away and take the one thing that stood out for you, or the 3 things that made sense to you. This is the best way to do it, because every astrologer will have their own lens. Every person is on their own journey and has this size and depth of toolbox in different areas of their life. And so you really just need to meet yourself where you're at. And again, Capricorn energy is put one foot in front of the other. Don't be afraid to take the lead. It is a leading sign. Take the lead of your life by just stepping into the next right step. There will be areas of discomfort in this. There will be a lot of opportunity to pivot, a very reflective space of what have I learned and grown through this year, what worked and what didn't, and what do I want to try take into next year. Bearing in mind that next year is kind of going to be an entire year of being in a gestation phase. You will be in the womb. We may not have immediate clarity around the changes and shifts that are happening in our lives. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your likes, shares, follows, and subscribes. And I look forward to 2025 with you and jumping further into exploring various charts and energies. And please remember, I'm available for healing sessions, coaching sessions, from astrology to tarot to crystal work, energy work, body work, but energetically. And I do that in person and virtually. So I have a lot in the toolbox, and I would love to journey further into the next year, into 2025 with you, if you resonate strongly with what I speak and what I do. Thank you for your time, and have a beautiful, beautiful new year, and I'll see you on the other side.